Hello, and welcome back to Paleozoic PCs. So today we're just going to try a quick little walkthrough. I've been playing with a program called BOOTMGR, BOOTMGR, I'll put a link in the description, that allows you to do multi-boot on any 8088 or higher PC. And I've already set this up to be able to dual boot DOS 3.3 and DOS 7 on an SD card, but I tried to add DR DOS to that setup and I could not get DR DOS to behave. So today I'm just going to try again while you tag along to see if I can get it to work by having DR DOS installed first. I'm not super optimistic, but let's see what happens. So as you see, there's the Boot Manager program. It's very small. So we go ahead and fire it up. And it displays all your existing partition tables, and it has a setup for installing boot menu items. And importantly, because DOS does not want there to be more than one primary DOS partition, it has an option so when you boot a menu item, you can hide an existing partition. Now this program hides them by changing their ID from the default to something not DOS. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and we're going to install Boot Manager. Now, one oddity of this is you'll see the only partition, I have a 100 megabyte partition for DR DOS, and for some reason DR DOS creates that in what this recognizes as slot number 4. When I created normal DOS partitions, I swear they started here. So maybe we're off on a bad foot already. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and first we're going to go to the menu over here, and we're going to get rid of this one because we don't have a drive D. And we're going to add a boot entry. We'll call it DR DOS, and we will associate it with partition 4. And we're not going to hide anything. And we'll go ahead and make it the default for now. And then we will go ahead and write the MBR. And we will install Boot Manager. We'll update it. Save the reserved bytes. Now it should be installed. So let's go. And let's go Control-Alt-Delete. And we should get the Boot Manager menu. So the way we're going to try to trick DOS into making another DOS partition, and again I've done this with multiple versions of MS-DOS and it does work. So we're going to go ahead and go back in there and run Boot Manager again. And this time we're going to go and we're going to modify this floppy boot entry. And we're going to modify it by saying when we boot the floppy, we'll hide partition 4. And that means when I boot from another floppy disk, it will basically the ID for this will change. And instead of being looking like a fat partition, it'll look like a non-DOS partition that will allow FDisk to try to make another one. So let's go ahead and try that. So we will go ahead and update the MBR, keep the existing bootloader, we'll update it, keep it. All right. I will install a DOS 6.7 boot disk in here. Quit. And we'll go ahead and reboot. Now again, importantly, we're going to boot with the boot menu for a floppy instead of just selecting to boot from A in the XTIDE BIOS. You know, we're not going to hit A here. We're going to boot the floppy. Now we're going to go ahead and run fdisk. Now if we display the partition information, you'll see we have a single non-DOS partition on this disk. So we will escape, and we will go ahead and try to create a DOS partition. We'll create the primary DOS partition. Sit here and sniff around the disk for a while. Now I'm going to tell it not to make it the maximum size because ideally I want to make an extended partition and make some space that can be shared between the two. So we're going to say no. And there's the total disk space. We're going to go ahead and make, I don't know, how about a 200 megabyte partition for DOS 7. Primary DOS partition created. Okay. And we're going to set that as the active partition. Do. Okay, escape. Okay, we will exit. System will now restart. Boot from the floppy again. Okay, we will format /s. Yes. DOS 7. All right. So I have Boot Manager on this disk. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go into Boot Manager. We're going to go ahead and go to the menu over here, and we're going to insert another entry. We will call this PC-DOS 7, and this is associated with partition 1. And now the important thing here is when this is booted, we're going to hide partition 4. And when this is booted, we're going to hide partition 1. So they won't fight over each other. And let's go ahead and write the MBR. Keep the existing bootloader. Update the bootloader, yes. And let's go ahead and quit. Exit now. So let's go ahead and reboot. Now the first thing we'll try doing is booting our new PC-DOS. EIR. We're all good. This takes forever because DOS on XTs, that when you do a DIR of partitions larger than 32 megs, takes forever. So now here's the $55 million question. So if I do Control-Delete, and I try DR DOS instead, it works. Fingers crossed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and reboot it again because I'm more familiar with DOS 7's FDisk program, I'll just go ahead and do the PC-DOS. So what we're going to go ahead is we're going to go and create a DOS partition. We're going to create an extended DOS partition, and go ahead and use the maximum size for the DOS extended partition. So, sure, let's make a gigantic partition. All right, it's all assigned. If we display the partition information, all right. Escape to exit Xdisk, system will not restart. And we will go ahead and boot PC-DOS again. We'll format D. We're going to go this data. All right. And now if we go ahead, here, let's just copy now it's going to take forever. So now we have a file on there to test. And Control-Alt-Delete. Go back into DR-DOS. DRD. That's a big number. And is that even the correct number? Let's see. Yeah, guess so. And that's how you do a turkey. So now that this is formatted like this, I can go ahead and pull this card and copy my working DOS 7 file set over to the PC-DOS drive. Now, one thing important to remember about this is the hidden partitions. Whatever DOS you booted into last, that's the one that's going to be unhidden. So if you want to pull out your storage card, in the case of a XTIDE or whatever, and manipulate it on another machine, you need to remember to have last booted the C drive that you want to be able to view, because the other one's going to be hidden. Any extended partitions, like the D drive we made, will be accessible all the time. But yeah, so if we go back into Boot Manager, if I say I want to go ahead and have PC-DOS as my default, I can go ahead and set that. And yeah, again, if whatever the floppy entry, which is really mostly extraneous once you've installed everything, you can just boot with the BIOS. And if you boot with the BIOS, whichever one you've unhidden last will be the one that's available. You know, if you're installing an OS, then you need to hide the associated partitions. And if you're not installing OS, you should probably still choose one DOS that you want to be able to see when you hit the floppy entry. But yeah, so if I go ahead and write the MBR, keep the existing, okay, keep, all right, exit. So if I go ahead and reboot, PC-DOS 7 works. If I reboot again, BTTR works. Now, as I said, I think I said at the beginning of the video, I have gotten this to work with DOS 3.3. Now, I believe DOS 3.3 will want to be in the first physical 32 megabytes of your drive. So if you're going to do this, you probably need to install DOS 3 first. Now, the issue you may run into is I discovered that because I actually created a disk that had 3 partitions on it and attempted to install DR-DOS into one of those partitions, and I discovered I could not get DR-DOS to behave when it was installed in a partition that had been created by a different DOS, at least with Boot Manager installed. So if you want to see if you can make that work, that's an exercise for the reader. And I apologize for this messy, terrible Comp-O-Vision presentation. I actually did try to film this with my better camera, and it ran out in the middle of talking. So my backup footage, which is captured by this terrible DR bridge, is what I had to go with. So anyway, good evening, everyone. Thank you.